Salutations, Denzians of YouTube, and what is going to be one of my last podcasts before shipping on out and probably going black for the next 2.5 to 3 months. We get one last review, and that is Underworld Awakening, the fourth installment of the Underworld franchise that sure shows us vampires and werewolves as, actual vampires and werewolves, not, well, that other franchise that shall not be named. No. Now, first, as always, my overall impression is rather mixed on this one. It's not the best installment in this series. In fact, I'd say this is the weakest installment of the entire franchise. Did I completely regret seeing it? No. It's mediocre. It fits. I mean, you'll watch it. As this is something that's on TV, I could see myself just kind of sitting watching it. I'll probably pick it up on DVD just to kind of complete the set, as I do own the other 3 films. But it's certainly the weakest of the film. I don't think it's going to be anybody's favorite unless they really kind of like. I could see this being somebody's favorite for like the first 5 minutes, because there's a really interesting and cool visuals there. And if the entire film was like it was in the first 5 minutes, I could easily see this being my favorite of the 5 franchises. Or the 4 movies, sorry. Getting it mixed up with Resident Evil. The other Screen Gems horror action franchise. I'll get into that later on, maybe. Possibly. Regardless, of course, we see Kate Beckinsale returning as Selene. Scott Speedman making literally a one-scene cameo. My understanding is he was only in one scene as a cameo appearance here. Well, 2 if you want to count that dummy that they put in a cryogenic set piece there. In reality, he was only there for one scene. Is a scheduling conflict that he apparently committed to another film, and they just couldn't show up for this one. Meh. Now, I don't really want to go and kind of go through the entire plot, mainly because at this point I think I am correct in my assumption that a lot of people that watch these reviews are people that have seen the film and are looking for feedback and seeing if other people had the same reactions that they had. So, alas, here I am. Now, I know some people probably are actually looking for genuine reviews, so if you listen, you'll probably get a good sense. But be warned, here there be spoilers, and there is indeed spoilers from here on out. I will be ruining stuff, so if you don't want anything ruined, well, you kind of heard my initial reaction, weakest of the franchise. I'm mixed, and to kind of really explain that why I'm mixed feelings on this, you kind of have to let me go into spoiler territory. So, catch 21? No, catch 22. Yeah. I don't know why I forget that saying. Anyway, the film starts off really good. The idea that humans find out about the underworld. They find out about the vampires and they find out about the lichens. And their reaction to it is exactly what you would expect. Burn it with fire. Yeah, the humans basically literally go on a purge and decide to kill every fucking vampire and werewolf they can find. It's almost like they've seen the Twilight films and we're like, no, we're not living in a world with these things. Anyway, the film picks up with this very, I don't know if it's supposed to be Holocaust-y imaging. If it is, it's in poor taste, because at the very least the vampires are dicks, and I really don't care if humans are going out and fucking slaughtering them, especially since our last film really showed that they were dicks to the humans, and makes you kind of untrustworthy of what the hell those guys were doing. But they're showing that the humans really completely outclass both of these factions. That they're too numerous, and when you're in the modern era, really technology has equaled the playing field. Selene seems to still be more powerful, but she was made the super vampire by having the Corvinus blood in in her. So I guess that's her exception why she can take out all these guards, why everyone else can get their ass kicked by the black-clad stormtroopers, who were actually, as a costume, was pretty cool looking, but they're only in the opening scene. And then these advanced stormtroopers disappear, and all we have is regular cops and rent-a-cop security agents. I don't know why they wouldn't use them for the rest of the film. But alas. One problem, though, I do have with the beginning that I don't know if everyone's going to pick up on this. There seem to be way too many vampires and werewolves. I mean, just way too many. You always got the sense that these were relatively small communities. Not relatively, they were small communities. You were picturing, possibly as small as a couple of hundred. At the most, globally, no more than like 10,000. I'm trying to remember when Celine estimated the size of the lichen in the sewers in the first movie. I think it was only a couple hundred, and that was like supposedly a massive nest. So they get the sense that it seemed like almost like 1 out of every 10 people or something was a vampire. They pull him out of every house. You always got the sense that they weren't really in the regular human population. That both groups, maybe more of the lichens would have hid more within the population because they were used to it, which I'll get into that little thing in a second. But at least the vampires, you always got a sense that they kind of stuck within their individual covens and really didn't, hide within the human population. They were much more probably running operations, kind of like running a company or something. If anything, if they did work, it seems like, at least in the first movie, it seemed like the vampires were just divided into a bunch of people sitting around in a big mansion, just drinking blood and having a good time, and the death dealers. That seemed to be it. But, well and behold, I guess it was a lot more. But it does at least show that there was a consequence, or that the movies were really leading up to something. And kind of the natural conclusion, one, that there's nobody covering up now for the vampire-lichen feud. As it turns out that there was, Corvinus had a group of humans called the Cleaners who covered up the war. Whenever there was a violent action, they would get on scene first and wipe out the evidence. They wouldn't participate in the conflict, but they were keeping a lid on everything. And you also got the sense that the leaders of both groups had taken actions to kind of realizing that they were both vulnerable if the humans ever found out. And, well, at least the vampires were doing this. The lichens were kind of laying low because they might have sensed that, but they also knew the vampires would have got them. But you at least got the sense that the vampires kind of realized that humanity held the favor. There was way too many humans. They could attack them during the daylight. They were always vulnerable. Especially at first, they could try to use the lichens to keep them away, but they weren't exactly reliable nowadays. So it makes sense that after Celine had basically killed off, or the leadership of both factions had been killed, the same leaders that had been leading these groups for centuries, and they're kind of ace in the hole elite team of cleaners had been wiped out, that it was inevitable that they would have been found out by humans. And really, yeah, that's the movie I think they should have made, with it all about them kind of dealing with the fallout from the previous 2 films, not counting the prequel. Kind of seeing that there was a lack of leadership, that they'd become so that both sides, and this would be something that would happen with groups of immortals, that both sides would have become so reliant on a real, their leadership, that when it's taken out, they just don't know how to replace them. That they become really leadership, that they become fractured. You have infighting, and it just explodes, and the humans find out, and of course don't react well. I could easily see the vampires kind of thinking, of course, they're probably naturally better than humans, so treating the humans rather, or handling that situation poorly. That would lead, of course, to and it's just going, yep, we gotta wipe these fuckers out. I don't know about the Holocaust imagery though. I mean, literally, like chucking vampire and like corpses like down from like the fucking rooftops onto like giant flaming piles of bodies. I was not expecting. Yeah. Like that's why I said I really wasn't expecting that many vampires and lichens to be about. But at least it showed that nowadays humans really probably could take these things on. I mean, technology is a great equalizer, and I think they kind of showed it there. We have kind of Celine somewhat cheating because of her special abilities, but we really never got that sense from her as a character that she'd become this. What I thought she was supposed to have now become a true immortal. That she was supposed to be like Corvinus, where she wasn't a hybrid anymore. She wasn't a hybrid. She had evolved past that, and where she had come like Corvinus, where she had the strength far superior than vampire like an aura hybrid, and with really no disadvantages at all. She'd really become almost godlike, like Corvinus had become. But about the only thing that we have seen that is, okay, she was able to handle the guards and the situation much better than anyone else. We could attribute that to her superior abilities gained by being this super vampire. And there's one scene where she's out during the day, and they go, how are you able to go outside during the daytime? And she goes, it's a gift. They still somewhat, though, kind of went back and said, no, she's a vampire. Which I think was a mistake. I think the thing where they go is, and to make her important was to go, no, she's way different now. She's gone past being a vampire. She is a full-fledged immortal. The only full-fledged immortal. It would have been interesting. It would have helped probably having her relationship then with Michael, because he's now the hybrid of both sides, and she is also something different. But instead they just make her like she's an uber vampire with none of the vampiric weaknesses. Because she still identifies with them, and I think that's also the problem, is, as it turns out in this film, the ultimate bad guy is what you see as this corporation that's doing experiments on the remaining lichens and vampires. See, first I think there's going to be like an umbrella corporation type conspiracy. We're going to do something stupid to make more money. And no, as it turns out, after they've kind of... Celine loses what turns out to be her daughter, which... Now we'll talk about her in a second. That this corporation that we've been seeing throughout the story is not actually the humans. The corporation is made up entirely of lichens. Not only lichens, but unlike we do get a scene of seeing it looks like more feral lichens. They're shown as like really raggedy, disease-ridden things because they're really pushed to the breaking point. We get the sense that no, these guys, when we see them, they're healthy-looking, ferocious things, and they have one lichen that's like twice as big as anything else. It's the super lichen. And after they attack, we kind of realize it's revealed, these guys were the corporation, this entire corporation that does all the medical experiment and all the medical testing so that they can, when there's a positive lichen, they can just put down, no, it was a negative. Blood sample's negative, this person's safe. And so that they're really rebuilding. Now, I like this kind of theme with this kind of sense of oppression that the lichens all of a sudden would really have to step up because they'd been hiding for so long against the vampires that they knew they would know how to blend into society. They would know how to infiltrate society and handle things well. And I do like that sense that the vampires would now be really pushed to the breaking point, but the lichens, very little had changed. Yes, they had to go through this massive culling, but they can adapt much more easily. But you get the sense... Oh, by the way, the corporation is run by Stephen Rea. I always forget how to pronounce his last name. But, after seeing him, I really was having, like, V for Vendetta flashbacks. By the way, I do love how they had Celine's girl, Eva, kill him by ripping out his throat. That was a brutal fucking rip out. Although they probably could have done with less CG blood and gore and gone with like an actual blood and gore. Would have been a lot better. Probably cheaper too, actually. But alas, they didn't. Yeah, but that was at least an interesting turn, at least an interesting twist, because you really were expecting the typical, it's greedy corporation go, this is just the Lycans, kind of how they would hide. And we kind of got the sense how they had adapted over the years. It looks like their ultimate plan was like, oh, we'll make the super vampire, we'll make a bunch of super werewolves, and then we'll take over the world. Wouldn't the humans just eventually start using nukes? I don't know. But they do kind of point and make the Lycans the ultimate villains, but that shouldn't be Underworld. Underworld was always very clearly established at okay, you can do the Lycans as bad guys at first, and then it's revealed that no, they're really sympathetic. Hell, even Evolution to a degree, we kind of got the sense of what happened to William. There's always supposed to be the plot of this is these two groups kind of coming together, and why you could have done this type of world and plot. Hell, you could have even kept the corporation evil, but they probably should have brought in some sympathetic Lycans. This was a very vampire-centric. I don't know who to blame for this. There was several writers, more than just Len Wiseman. There's actually, let me see here, looking at IMDb, we have a total of 6, but we can ignore let's see here. Okay, when it comes to the actual screenplay, the screenplay was written by 4 individuals. Len Wiseman was 1. Now, how much of the screenplay he actually wrote is a different story. Because he is the series godfather, he really can write very little, and I'm guessing that's probably what happened because he's taking on the Total Recall series at the moment. Let's take a look at. We've got, let's see, John Havlin. What is he? A crew member, writer. He did write on The Shield, mostly a TV writer, and wrote the short Donkey Punch. I don't think I want to know what that one was about. Let's see, Michael. I'm not gonna try to pronounce that last name. But this guy wrote Thor, or the basic story for Thor, and is the writer for World War Z. If he wrote the beginning, World War Z might be good. He's also the writer on Ninja Assassin. He did a Babylon 5 stuff. Interesting. A lot of Babylon 5. And the real Ghostbusters. This guy actually seems possibly legit. And let's see, Allison Burnett, who has written, let's see, Untraceable, Feast of Love, Perfect Romance, Blood Fist 3, Forced to Fight. I love the Blood Fist movies. And I guarantee there's people on there kind of going, what the fuck is this guy talking about now? Yeah, I was expecting a bit of a less experienced cast, but that still doesn't mean they didn't get the franchise and kind of took it into their own way. I think the writers were way too vampire-centric. Underworld at its core is supposed to be about these. It's like I said earlier, it's Romeo and Juliet. We have Capulets and the Montagues, these two sides coming together in some way. Both sides are supposed to have at least one character we can relate to. This is the only character that's somewhat relatable that's a Lycan is actually a hybrid, which is, of course, the daughter, Eve. And even at the end, like, she kind of says, the enemy remains the same, the Lycans will be put down. If they could have kept the exact plot, they could have dropped that line and just shown maybe had one scene with like a couple of Lycans kind of going, they have their own ideals of what Lycans are supposed to be, and they've screwed over the rest. They're really going to leave the rest of us to die. Some sense that at least not all the Lycans are with them. like I said, one of the ideals you could have ran with the overall plot is that these groups that had previously had a very unified structure with a couple of leaders at the top and everyone followed them because they've been following them for centuries, all of a sudden don't, so they break up into numerous little groups where there used to be two covens, is my understanding, one on each side of the Atlantic. There now was dozens and dozens of tiny covens, each with their own little individual leaders. And same thing with the werewolves. Right? Before there was some sort of overall command, but now there's just groups of packs all over the place, and this is just the most successful pack that's found a way to infiltrate. You kind of got the sense why or how Lycans kind of probably infiltrated in here. You get the idea that the son of the CEO here, Stephen Rea, he got infected, and then it looks like Stephen Rea decided to embrace the Lycan lifestyle, and he became a Lycan. Had probably most of his people become Lycans, and since they were already doctors running and developing the tests for the government to identify who was a Lycan and who wasn't, they were just able to sit back and go, blood sample negative for the people that they want it to be. Because they also made a mention that we were finding, like during the apocalypse, that they were finding dozens of covens, which doesn't make any sense because it was quite clear that there was only supposed to be like two. Now, if you were doing a plot and then you were showing that immediately kind of after the coven or after the elders were killed, that all of a sudden the vampires had kind of instantly broken into dozens and dozens of covens, that would have made a lot more sense. What should I? Let's see. Oh yeah, we'll talk about. I guess we could talk about the Eve character. Interesting. It had me flashbacks to Ultraviolet, where you have like this child that wearing a white outfit from a lab. Everyone's hunting them down. Very Ultraviolet like. That's what the movie reminded me of. It was interesting we got to see the kind of the. It was interesting we did see like the one surviving coven, how they were kind of like really living in like a crappy underworld sewer system. There was relics. They tried to show the conflict between kind of the younger group led by not Michael Ealis. At least they showed one sympathetic human. That's most ironic thing. In a movie that's supposed to be about vampires versus the humans, they did show the human, a sympathetic human character. They didn't do one for the Lycans. Detective, they kind of even explained it that he had known his wife had been a vampire. If they should have done where his wife was a Lycan, that would have then at least been able to make more sense. Well, it would at least give us some sort of connection. Like this is again an example where the writers are really too vampire centric. But no, Theo James was the character, or the actor I was thinking of. His character David. He's kind of the more young, rebellious. He wants to fight the humans. As a human myself, it is kind of hard for them to do a movie and have that as the theme, where like the humans are the bad guys. We really don't have a good. I don't think they earned the right to kind of trash humanity. They should have done, and I think they did it somewhat with the Detective Sebastian character. That both sides slowly begin to understand each other. That perhaps the humans had overreacted, or I think that's the theme they should have gone for, or at least for ending the franchise, where kind of all three sides finally kind of figure things out. The vampires kind of figuring out that they can't be this elitist group. Humans, they're not going to eat us and kill us all. Well, I think I rambled on enough. Kind of pointing out the flaws. I don't know about the flaws. Yes, because the disregard. I will say this, because I did see this in 3D, again, because I couldn't find a 2D showing. I know increasingly theaters are kind of abandoning the 3D stuff. the theaters around here apparently are refusing to do so, probably to their own detriment, because I guarantee you there's a lot of people that are like, I can only find a 2D. Me and my friends have had that, where we can only find 2D showings, or 3D showings. Fuck it, guess we're not seeing the movie. Like I said, I'm shipping out in, like a little over a week. And I had one of those AMC cards, so for me, it was like I have to kill this card off, because I'm not going to get a chance to use it for the next 3 months. So, let me hold that one. Used it. I could see other people that are not doing this because it was in 3D. So if you can find a 2D showing, go see it in 2D. If you can't, it's not worth seeing in 3D. And I will say this clearly. The 3D was barely noticeable because the film is dark. It's a very dark film, and that makes the 3D very hard to spot. And it does not seem like it was meant to be in 3D. This looks like it was a post. This was done in post. That they decided after filming that, we're gonna make more money and do this as a 3D film. There was only a couple of 3D effects that I actually noticed. Certainly not worth your $3. And again, a lot of that was probably due to how dark it was. I guarantee there was 3D. Technically, I guarantee there was 3D shots in there, but nobody could notice them because it was so dark. And that's the problem when you do these type of films, is that you have to set them up so perfectly in order to have the 3D work right, that if you don't do it, it becomes a problem. A perfect example, because this is one of the few films I've seen that had at least, when it comes to doing the 3D effects, have done them somewhat correctly. And I know people are going to hate me for bringing this film up, but it was Resident Evil Afterlife, where you could at least tell that they intended to make it 3D from the get-go. Afterlife and Avatar. Avatar, they made sure the planet was nice, bright, vibrant, because that brings the colors out, and that makes the 3D come out. Same thing with Afterlife. There's a reason why the end of that film, the inside of that ship, is completely white. That bright, kind of sterile white. It's not only to have that kind of medical sterile feeling, but Anderson did that for a reason, because it helps the 3D so much. So when characters are jumping around and stuff, and he wants to show that 3D off, it looks well. Same thing even like when they did that, why they used kind of rain. Those raindrops are very bright because they're that white reflectiveness. So on a film, they're shinier, they stand out. Therefore, it's easy when you put the 3D effect on it. They really do come out at you. Or they had that interesting 3D effect when they were raining down. But my point is, they actually, with Afterlife, had planned all that stuff in advance. That's why the lighting was particular. That's why they had it. Afterlife took place mostly during the day. Yeah, they had a gray sky, but it was clearly not supposed to be nighttime out. For a reason, they were doing 3D effects, therefore they needed to be brighter. Here, you could tell that they didn't do that. That it wasn't planned. That afterwards, they just tried to find whatever scenes they could. Mostly the one car chase with the half-starved Lycans. That's really where the 3D effects can be seen. I barely noticed them in the end battle. Again, because the final battle takes place in a dark parking garage. Been a while since we had a parking garage showdown. But we're approaching the half-hour mark, and I've been rambling on for a half hour, which is normally my limit for these things. And that's kind of why you guys come to this channel. It's because I will ramble on for 25 minutes to 30. So that will probably be it. I might do one last farewell video, because I do have over a week, and I might get bored. But this is going to probably be my last movie review until I finish with basics. So I will hopefully return. I'll guarantee you, at least after I finish, I will probably do 1 or 2 videos at the very least. If not, kick it in with higher quality stuff. But see you guys hopefully for the summer, because there's some good stuff coming out. I shall return for that.